Aye, she's good. Thanks for asking. Right, everyone, it's Friday, end of the working week, blah, 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 usual chat. I do enjoy a Friday. Speaking to you wonderful people. It's almost always on the eve of a Celtic game, which is always handy. And the sun is shining where I live, in an unknown town, in an unknown part of an unknown country. And I kind of feel like everything's all right in the world, to be honest. We've got a fair bit to get through, as usual, on this video. Celtic are playing tomorrow. Motherwell visit Celtic Park. And I want to chat a little bit about that game. I want to try and clear up some of the confusion around who is injured at Celtic, who isn't injured at Celtic. Emphasis there on try to clear up, because it may be more difficult than not. We'll give it a go anyway. We'll also touch on some of the news stories that have happened over the past few days. In fact, we are going to start there. I have been writing over on that wonderful website, 67hailhail.com, for the past few days, and I've picked out a few stories that I think are worth talking about. We begin with the Green Brigade, who have followed up on the promise they made at the start of the season of a second full stadium tifo at Celtic Park. Now, you will hopefully, if your memory's half decent, remember opening day of this season, Flag Day as they coined it, when we did get a full stadium tifo at Celtic Park. Yeah, great scenes that really set the tone for that day, and arguably the fast start we made to the league season that sees us where we are at the moment. We are going to get that again before the end of the season, given that there are only 2 matches to go after tomorrow's game. I think it's fair to assume that it will be Trophy Day, the final match of the season, on Saturday, the 27th of May. When we see Celtic Park decked out in colour once again. The Green Brigade released a statement on the North Curve's Twitter feed the other night, with the latter portion reading: as we approach the final stages of the season, we are planning the second full stadium tifo. In order to produce another memorable display, we require similar funding, which is why we are relaunching the tifo fund. In addition to this, and if necessary, we may hold a bucket collection at an upcoming match to ensure costs can be met. As always, the continued backing of the Celtic support is greatly appreciated and integral, depending on which way you go, to what we do. So you can donate now. You can go on the North Curve's Twitter feed and you'll be able to find links to donate. And I would say it's well worth it, given how good Celtic Park has looked in the past with full stadium displays, especially when they've been organised by ultras groups rather than the club themselves. But that's all I'm going to say. Now, you may have seen some photos coming from Lennoxtown yesterday, posted onto Twitter, but not, how do I put this, not by people you would normally expect to be at Celtic training. So why were some of these people you're seeing on screen in attendance at Lennoxtown yesterday, when we usually only ever get to see what the club want us to see, and it's usually only on a Friday? Well, it's part of the club's International Coaches Convention 2023, which gives aspiring coaches a chance to watch and learn from some key figures at the club, including Ange Postecoglou, Fran Alonso, Darren O'Day, Stephen McManus. The club run 4-day courses, I believe, from Wednesday until tomorrow, which cost over £400. They also do a 2-day course, which covered yesterday, Thursday, and today, Friday, which costed around, I think, £200. And effectively for that, you get various opportunities to see first team training and presentations from some of the names I mentioned earlier. I know Ange gave a presentation. I think someone who was there said it was like a couple of hours he spoke for, basically explaining a lot of what he does, both in terms of, tactically how Celtic set up on the pitch, but also how he deals with certain situations and just generally how he tries to come across as a manager. Probably not a great surprise to you, but I've heard that he stole the show yesterday. It was a Q&A as well, so he obviously answered questions. Fran Alonso was speaking earlier today, and it seems like quite an enjoyable experience. We've agreed we're going to club together and send Stevie next year so that he can actually learn a bit about football. Just terrible, and he's not even here to defend himself, and I'm still chucking grenades at him. But yeah, it looked interesting, let's just say. Other news, we had Johnny Hayes absolutely slamming VAR yesterday, saying it has taken the fun out of football. We had Motherwell boss Stuart Kettlewell lavishing praise on to Celtic, saying that we are one of the best teams to play in Scotland for a number of years, which is, he's not wrong, put it that way. Interestingly, we had a story that was spotted by friend of the show, Khalil Kayal. This story post from Ki Sung Young, former Celtic midfielder, of course, on Instagram yesterday. Now, why is this interesting apart from the fact he's holding a Celtic shirt? Well, that is Chris Mackay, second from the left there. And it's also Michael Nicholson, who you'll be probably even more familiar with, second from the right. And we can assume that this is in Korea. And it's probably fair to assume that it was to do with a Celtic trip to South Korea in the summer. I am guessing that we're going to wait until the league is wrapped up, which, let's face it, may not be too long before we announce all of this. There's obviously been a lot of chat about us going to Japan. I think that's effectively been confirmed. We just don't know the details of that. Probably to face Ange's old team, also Dai's and Maida's old team, Tomo Iwata, his old team as well, Yokohama F Marinos, possibly playing Manchester City 2, they're also in the area, and then a game over in South Korea. I know Seoul has been mentioned. I was looking up Key, and he currently plays for FC Seoul, so that would perhaps make sense as well. But as I say, we're probably going to have to wait until things are concluded in terms of us being champions before we can announce this, just because if we don't win the league, we could have things like qualifiers. Remember those days when we would play qualifiers? No longer under Ange Postecoglou do we require them. Right, if we move on to more immediate matters and the injury latest with Celtic stars, there's a fair chance that's maybe the only reason you've clicked this video is to find out what exactly is going on, because there's a fair bit of intrigue and mystery, I would say. Now, on Fridays, I try to hold off as long as possible on recording so that we get to hear what Ange has said. But the truth is that there's still a lot of mystery surrounding several players. So Ange was asked a couple of times at the start of his press conference today about Cameron Carter-Vickers. He actually, I would say, got a wee bit kind of frustrated with being asked a second time what is going on with Cameron Carter-Vickers. Effectively, the story here is that earlier in the week it was reported that CCV would be back for Celtic this weekend and would also play against Rangers in the Scottish Cup semi-final next weekend, but that he could then potentially undergo surgery after that game and miss the rest of our season. So it seems very much like CCV has been playing through maybe not an injury, but certainly some sort of knock or difficulty in recent months. And reading between the lines, perhaps the feeling is that next Sunday is our last major defining game of the season, given that the league is, as I say, pretty much won. Still got a wee bit of work to do, but I don't think anyone's doubting the fact we're going to win the league. And given that regardless what happens, next Sunday in the semi-final, We'll either have a cup final to play against lower league opposition when we probably don't need CCV to win, or we won't have a cup final to play at all when we certainly won't need CCV. There's maybe a feeling at the club that after next weekend's game, that's the time to end his season early, get him surgery, mean that he's fighting fit for the start of the season. A wee bit like what we saw with Kyogo a year ago. I know they're a bit different there. Kyogo had like a substantial injury. CCV clearly doesn't have one that's really hampering him, because he's going to play tomorrow, as Ange said earlier. But there was, Celtic did make a decision there to put Kyogo through surgery and have him fighting fit for this season. So maybe there's a similar idea with CCV. I did speak to a few people who kind of know a bit more about this, based in America, and it does seem like surgery is an option, but no decision has really been reached in terms of that at the moment. But I think, we won't hear anything till after the semi-final. So the headline here is that, of stuff we know, that Ange confirmed that CCV has been training this week and will play tomorrow. Now on to other players, and this is where it gets interesting. Ange said that all the other players are closer to a return but won't make this weekend. So who does this cover? I guess it covers Real Hatate, Liel Abada and James Forrest. Now Jota is the big mystery for me here. He was last seen going off 2 minutes after rounding Alan McGregor. Last time out, he played against Rangers. He missed last week at Kilmarnock due to the pitch and Ange wanting to freshen things up. Pretty sure he hasn't been in training all week. He's certainly not been in any Lennoxtown photos we've seen, either from the club or the other sources, from Thursday or Friday. And we actually haven't heard Ange talking about any injury with Jota there. So it's a wee bit of a head scratcher. I'd be a bit worried about him being fit for next weekend as well as Hatate. There'd be two big misses for next weekend. We can't overlook that. But I guess, as Ange said earlier, it's all about tomorrow at this stage. In terms of a team for tomorrow with the aforementioned players missing, this is what I am going for. Joe Hart in goal, a back four of Alistair Johnson, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Carl Starfelt and Greg Taylor, Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly and Tomo Iwata in midfield, Sead Haksabanovic on the right, Daizen Maeda on the left and Kyogo through the middle. Still more than enough to put in a big performance tomorrow and score some goals. As we spoke about the other day, we're on this incredible 17-game winning run. It's actually one of the best winning runs we've ever been on in our history. You may remember back to season 2016-17 under Brendan Rodgers when we managed 17 wins in a row in all competitions as well. That's the most we've ever managed in the 21st century. I think we had 14 in season 2011-12. We had 13 in 2003-04. Some of you may remember the number 25 meaning something that season, but that was 25 wins in a row in the league only. So in terms of all competitions, if we win tomorrow against Motherwell, that would then become our longest winning run of the entire 21st century, which kind of tells you that we're living through pretty cool times to support Celtic. I know there's always like the caveat of like the opposition, and like I don't think we'd ever be in this kind of run if we had Champions League games in the midst of it, but that's just kind of where we are as a club at the moment. But it's amazing, and there's a fair chance I think tomorrow that we make it on to 18 wins in a row, and then we see after that. As we do go further back through the decades, details get sketchier, but it does seem very much like the record number of wins Celtic have had in all competitions, and this does include European matches, this wee run, is unsurprisingly set by that team called the Lisbon Lions back in the mid-1960s. They managed 25 wins in a row at that stage. That run stretched from a win over Greenock Morton in April 1966 all the way to November of that year when they defeated Stirling Albion. So, what we're on, 17 at the moment, 8 to go to equal that record, 9 to go to beat it. To do the latter, we'd have to win every game between now and the end of the season and the first match of the new campaign. So no pressure, guys. Officials for tomorrow, just quickly: referee John Beaton, assistants Alan Mulvaney and Colin Drummond. The fourth official is Graham Granger, VAR is Mike Runcone, and assistant VAR is John McCrossan. We will have a reaction for you after the game tomorrow. I'm actually in speaking to Ange and a player post-match, so we may be a little bit later with the reaction, but we'll have it for you at some stage. Enjoy the game and we'll speak to you after.